having that on your toolbox is a great, great tool to have for expanding your business. So that's very important. Now, why we need this? Why USDA or other agencies, federal or state agencies, want you to have this kind of certification? Now, I know that, perhaps, in a recent year, I'll give an example. How many of you have heard or somehow indirectly or directly got impacted by the baby formula shortage in recent years? So basically, you will see that from the supermarket store, from the grocery store, the baby formula was just vanished. And let me tell you this is not the supply chain problem which we are seeing because of COVID-19 and aftermath of the COVID-19. This is completely different. This is a food safety concern which happened to one of the big infant formula manufacturer, their plant, big plant. It's not like a small operation. They could not maintain proper food safety, and therefore the infant formula was contaminated with microorganisms, the bacteria which can cause disease and potentially kill human beings. Guess what? Infant formula was fed to infants, newborn, who are the most vulnerable part of our population. 4 infant died. So the entire operation was shut down. Everybody was panicked. So all different manufacturers, they pull out their product for testing. And therefore, the president has to enact the Defense Procurement Act to get the infant formula back to the. This is a food safety problem. And there are numerous other. I don't want to take 2 hours of time and giving the lecture about why food safety is important, but food safety is very important. You are producing something which you or your family or your friend or your neighbor is going to consume, and you do not want things to go there which could have been prevented. And that's why we all need food safety. It's true for you, the grower. It's true if I'm working in a kitchen or a commercial kitchen, I'm preparing food, or even I'm serving in my home. It's very important. Because we can prevent it. This is not something it's unpreventable. No, this is quite preventable if we pay attention to certain things. And the GAP program makes you aware of those things, what you should do, what are the best practice to avoid the issues with food safety. So that's why GAP is one of these food safety program which USDA started, and there are different variants of that, and we can talk about this in the next slides, but it started with the intention to make the farms or the farmers in different scales, small to very large, to comply with certain safety guidelines when it comes to food safety. Now, this is a voluntary program. That's what, this is not something which you have to do it. So this is a tool, this is a resource, this is an opportunity available out there. It's voluntary that whether you would take it or not. USDA is not going to come and make you, responsible for having a GAP program. No. So it's a completely voluntary program. And what happens for this audit? It happens on a schedule basis. So it's not something somebody, kind of an auditor just walks into your field one fine morning and says, hey, I'm going to do the GAP audit. No. It is scheduled, so you have time to get prepared. And usually it happens at least once during harvest season and once during post-harvest season. So this is something to kind of, when you are growing actively, things are on your field, at the time the audit can happen, and also another audit can happen after the harvest activities is over. So this is how the program runs, where somebody comes, and it's like a building inspection kind of thing. Kind of think about that term, like, they come and they do safety inspection kind of thing. Okay? So now, there are 3 different types of GAP, or good agriculture practice. So what we all know about the GAP is the original GAP program which was launched by USDA. And then there are variants of that. There were refinements, there were value addition, or I say that there are different ways, different agencies, they came into the play. So the GAP, which is the original GAP, which was instituted by USDA, which focuses on best agricultural practices. So best practices is the key word. To verify that fruits and vegetable, I guess you guys are all doing the fruits and vegetable, are grown, packed, handled, and stored in the safest manner possible, so that it minimizes the risk of microbial contamination. So microorganisms are things like bacteria, like virus, some parasites, okay? So this could all potentially end up in the produce, what you are growing. So the program, the GAP program, makes an effort to educate your staff or yourself to minimize the risk. So it's a risk minimization program. Then there is a harmonized GAP called H-GAP. This is another variant of GAP. So it allows the farmers to demonstrate to buyers that they have implemented specific requirements in produce safety rule. Now, what is the produce safety rule? I'll come to that in a minute. So produce safety rule is a set of federal rule or law, you can say, which is written in a piece of legislation called Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. Now, how many of you have heard about this word FSMA? So I think, what I'm getting, less people have heard about FSMA than GAP. That's what my guess is that, yes. Yeah, that's in the very last 2 pages on your toolkit, okay? So you'll see there in the 3rd bullet is Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. So this is a new sets of regulation. This is basically our nation's premier food safety regulation. It was enacted in 2011, and there are different aspects of it, and we can talk about that in a separate event, but this is what is right now as we speak is the most overreaching food safety regulation that we have, okay? Now, what Harmonized GAP has done is actually taken a part of that Food Safety Modernization Acts. It's called Produce Safety Rule because that applies to produce, whoever is growing produce, like all the growers over here, or we are interested in growing produce. So that food safety rule applies to the produce growers, and that's integrated into an harmonized GAP. So it's in harmony with an USDA program and with an FDA program. Remember, produce safety rule is run and governed and administered by Food and Drug Administration. That's an FDA, another federal agency. So the harmonized GAPs takes into consideration both of these food safety aspect from two different agencies. Now then there is another one called Harmonized GAP Plus. Now H GAP Plus, which is basically another layer of, I would say, approval or accreditation. So basically, if you get the Harmonized GAP Plus, then you can technically ship your product to overseas, not only in the United States, because this is coming from Global Food Safety Institute, which is more of an Europe-based institute, but they have a globalized ways, because nowadays, guess what? A lot of these fruits and vegetables what we consume, they are not sourced locally. they come from different part of the world. So how do we make something which is harmonized across the globe? So that's why Global Food Safety Institute comes up with certain guidelines, which is recognized by USDA, FDA, and other agencies in other countries. So therefore, these are the different variants. So this is information, again, as I said, that I'm not intending to kind of give you everything, because each one of these could be a 3-day workshop to go through over. But this is just like, you just know that there is something called age gap plus or something, okay? Now, another thing which could be extremely relevant to you is a group gap concept, which is USDA's system, gap system, but group gap. Now, as the name suggests, if you're in a group gap program, you are teaming up with your fellow growers, and you are being audited as a group. Okay, so this is more of a cooperation between each of your friends and neighboring grower, nearby grower, and so you can pull a team together, and then what you do, you go through the process called group gap. And we'll go to some detail about the group gap and how it's done. So you get certified, whether gap certified or harmonized gap certified or harmonized gap plus certified, as a group, not as an individual grower, okay? There are a lot of advantages of that, and I'll go into that. So what happens as a part of the group gap, first of all, you have to collect a group of individual farmers as a group. Then you have to develop and implement a shared quality management system, which is called QMS. So what you are developing a QMS, which is a shared QMS. So this is something like this toolkit. We are all individuals in this room, but we are reading a same toolkit. Very similarly, the QMS will be a document which will be shared by everybody and could be implemented to each one of you individually, even though this is the same document you are implementing, okay? So that is one of the things. And then there will be guidelines of food safety practices or recommended food safety practices. So you develop this QMS and the food safety practices as a group, and you follow that guideline and the practices document when you are coming to your individual farm and doing your farming. So you have a guiding document. It's not yours exclusively. It is exclusive to your group, and you are a part of that group. Okay, so that's the advantage. Like, you're creating one thing and which can be shared by 10 other people, 5 other farms. So there has to be a group manager, so you have to assign somebody from your group as a group manager who takes the responsibility for implementation of the group's QMS. So it's more of a community-based approach, where you have someone who is a manager or group manager who is responsible for implementing it. And this is not uncommon in the group gap practices, that if you have 10 farms coming together in the group gap program, sometimes in some situation they hire a person who is a group manager. Sometimes, that is kind of ridiculous because you just don't have that, to hire somebody. So they take turns. So farm A, farm B, farm C, this year I'll be the group manager, so I'll be in the, it's a community-driven, aspect. So therefore, that system works really well for small farmers. So this year, he will be for the group manager and would be in charge of making sure the quality management system is followed, the food safety practices are followed. So it's kind of an internal coordinator, kind of auditor, internal auditor. Now next year, maybe she will be the group manager and would be in charge of the 10 farms that's in my group. So that's quite possible. Now, there would be an internal auditor. Now, someone I always, encourage that someone from the group could be taking some training, and I can share that information where you can get trained to become some sort of auditor, internal auditor. Now, that person would be going to your farm. He or she is a part of your team or your group, goes to the farm and talks about, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you need to follow that. So this is the internal audit system. So before USDA comes and do the audit, you already know that what are the things I need to take care of, because I may be not using this particular thing properly, I'm not storing that properly, or my water, I need to be doing certain things with my water source, or there could be many other things, So you know that, okay, I need to change this because this is not in compliance with the food safety practices. So you are ready. By the time the USDA comes for your audit, if there is anything which needs to be changed or rectified, you have done the rectification. And that thing has been caught by your internal audit process. So once this is done, then you are ready for the audit, right? And you can continue that thing. And then the auditor might come and find something which, of course, you can then implement that. But at least, internal audit helps you for the external audit later on. Now, USDA audits the group's QMS, that is your quality management system. Remember that the entire group has one QMS. So USDA comes and audits it. And on-site audit, they also perform on-site audit. So they go to the farm and look around the farms. Now, if the group demonstrates the compliance with its QMS and food safety audit standard, the group will be issued a group gap certification. So once the USDA auditor comes, reviews your documents in the QMS, your food safety compliances, and in-field audits pass, everyone pass in the group. Okay? So let me ask you the USDA, the question. So when you go for the group gap audits, do you do all the farms or just, you just select some of the farms, Yeah. Okay. So square roots, if you have 16, it will be 4 exactly square root if the 16. If you're 12, then 4 is basically the nearest square root. Yes, best match. So, yeah, so this is kind of randomly they pick because the expectation is that all the 16 or 12 are following the same QMS, same food safety guidelines, so they should all be compliances. Remember that out of 16, only 4 are being actually checked in field. 12 are not. But they have to be compliant because this is just like sampling. I'm sampling from 16, 4, and if 4 passes, all 16 passes, right? So basically that kind of is the overall philosophy of this. Yes, Jen. Absolutely, yes. So basically, the 2 questions for the online viewers, if you cannot, yes. Okay, so let me repeat this question. The question was that when USDA comes and do these audits, is it kind of announced before or is it surprised audit? The answer is these are announced and scheduled audits. So you will not be surprised that an USDA auditor is knocking your door and saying that, hey, I want to audit your farm. So that's one thing. And another point which Jana mentioned is that when we are talking about group gap, it's a process which can be applied to either gap or age gap or age gap plus. You can get either one of the three certification. Group gap is a process by which you apply. You are not applying individually, you are applying as a group. But you don't have to apply for 4 of them, 3 of them, nobody does it. You have to apply for one of them. How you form the team, how you apply is just as a group, not as an individual. That's it. So moving forward, yes. So let me take the mic to you.
Are the QMS the same as like an SOP? And are they part of the food safety manual? And is it like one food safety manual for all of the farms?
First, let me answer it, and then I'll have the USDA. Yes, it's like a standard operating. It's a specialized way of naming for each program. So that would be specific for your food safety operation. You may have things which are really not directly addressing the food safety side of it. If it's a part of SOP, that's not the part of the QMS which is relevant to the GAP program. So it's like an SOP, but it has to be a standalone document. Am I right?
Yes, you are. So it would be a standalone document. So when you think about your quality management system, it is how the group manages itself. And then your food safety plan is where you're going to break down the SOPs for your food safety procedures.
Another question? Okay, good. So, moving forward, so here is some, something to consider. Maybe. So, when you're forming a group, or you're thinking or contemplating on going for a group gap, first of all, you have to obviously think about that. This is the right thing for me? Can I assemble enough number of farms to have this group gap? Because in the next few slides, I'm going to show you what entails a group gap program. Even there are certain things which are needed for the group gap program. So you need to be doing some sort of evaluation before you jump into a group gap program. Now, do you have in your group a knowledgeable staff member or someone who can actually write and implement the QMS? Some sort of technical assistance is needed. Now, one of the things I must say here, in Illinois, what we are trying, that if you decide to go for a group gap, from the part of extension, we can help, of you to create this. Now, but the other prerequisites, like, you have to have some numbers so that, you are not forming a group of only 4 or 5 small farms. It should be about 10, 12 farms. That makes things easier for you, as well as, it really has a good impact on that. So if you have that number, and if you decide that we now need some technical assistance for creating the QMS, and we do not have one, then at that point of time, you can reach out to me, and I can help you in creating the QMS document in that case, or any other food safety plan. We can offer training. We have very good presence here in Cook County, where, food safety plan writing workshop and going through how to implement, how to maintain, those trainings are very much possible, and we can offer that. Now, do you have a staff member or in the group able to hire an individual who can meet the USDA auditor criteria? So that's another thing in the groups, it may be there are certain criteria, some educational or background criteria is needed to have one individual who has some credential on that. Now, again, those criteria can be fulfilled by taking some of the training. For example, FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule, we do offer training to become a grower, compliant grower. So it's a grower training. Now, if you're interested, contact with me, and I have done with the 2 farms in central Illinois who are now the certified trainer for Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule. So the educational part, we can talk about that. We can talk with USDA and say that, okay, this individual has gone through our training. These are the battery of training this individual has gone through. So therefore, you may not have to hire somebody for that matter. You can have somebody who has the credential to become that, internal auditor or, to run your QMS. Yes.
I was going to say, isn't there some, probably some trainings online they can take in food safety, like Alchemy's one that you can take, you can get on there, offers a ton of different ones. Oh, and Jana's fantastic and has this little flyer, Food System Leadership Network, where you guys can go to get the information you need. Awesome. Thanks, Jana. Thanks, Dr. Banerjee.
Yep. So there are third-party programs, and there are food safety manager certificate. So these are all information that's available, and in this toolkit you will find that. If you're in doubt, sometimes we don't read because we just probably missed it. Reach out to the extension, and we would be able to help you to get these things done. This is not something you have to hire somebody, a PhD holder, and kind of not like that. So when this is put, sometimes people get a little bit, okay, now we need to hire somebody. No, you can get training. It's a great training. I mean, this will help you as an individual grower. So, I encourage at least 50% of you take these trainings, because USDA and FDA are helping, or you have to look at from this angle. When you are a federal agency, you are charged to safeguard the public. Now, that's where this compliances issue is coming, because when there's a foodborne outbreak happens, then the FDA and USDA has to go and answer to the Congress that what you guys are doing, how come this happened? So that's where they're coming from, right? So this is their mission. As a grower, as a manufacturer, our mission should be, at the first place, why should I do something which would make somebody ill? Why should, so how can we avoid doing that? Take the trainings. These trainings are not very expensive, and I can give you a battery of training which are not going to be that expensive. There are expensive variants, there are inexpensive variants. They do the same thing, it's just marketing. You spend $3,000 for the same training which is offered for $300. And that's how it is. So reach out with your extension, with some of the community organizations who work in this area. You can get a lot of information. But the bottom line here is that you need to have this internal discussion, thought process that is group CAT is the thing which we want to go. And if we decide, then there are things you need to be doing, So one of the advantages, in all these, activities, whether it's a group CAP, whether it is an individual CAP, but let's talk of the group CAP, it opens up doors for you, for your business. So as you can see that the group CAP program, if you're a part of the group CAP program, you are responsible for things which is a part of the shared responsibility, in a sense that you are responsible for your own operation, true. but you are getting all the information, all the tools, all the resources from the group gap activity, right? Now, you can think of as an hub where, things are being done centrally, you are a part of that hub, and the end result is that it opens up a variety of market opportunity beyond just selling to farmers market. So that's one of the major, advantage of going for the group gap. And then there are a lot of resources out there. For example, USDA's website, and some of these are also included in your toolkit. This information are extremely, extremely valuable. And if you help to find this, our extension, contact our local extension office here, and they should be able to provide you. And you have my contact, anytime, send me an email, call me. If I'm in a class or in a meeting, please leave me a voice message, I will call you back. Send me an email, that's the easiest way. I can send you some document if you need that. So bottom line is there is help available for you here locally. Now, we are just talking about benefits, right? So, and sometimes, when I was reading through the slides, I must say that, this is a great marketing tool for GAP. So GAP is a marketing tool, but this presentation talks a lot of benefits, which kind of, I must say, may evoke some serious interest in you. And this is good for everyone, not only for you, but for the consumers, for your business, for the overall public, health and consumer health, right? So there are certain issues, as you can say, that there are certain benefits that it greatly reduces the risk of foodborne illnesses because now you are compliant with food safety practices. So the chance that your commodity might be contaminated with foodborne pathogens is lesser. It does not eliminate though, but it significantly reduces the risk. And it also automatically creates broader market opportunity for you because, somebody wants a GAP certification, you provide that certification. That yes, I am GAP certified producer. So you are a certified supplier. You almost become a certified supplier to a variety of operations. Now, there are certain caveats, and this is very important. Till date, there is no food safety system which can eliminate 100% risk, because that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the beast. I mean, what these certificates or the audits they do, they reduce the chance. They do not eliminate that. So there could be a residual risk, and we all understand that. So when something happens, something bad happens, and suppose you are in a lawsuit, in a very unlikely situation, how do you save yourself? If you can provide proof that I have done all mundanely possible things to reduce the risk, even after that this happens, that's the thing you need to kind of prove in a court of law, that this is not because of the negligence. So this is, you have to remember, we live in an era where about 3 years ago, about 2016 or 18, I am forgetting, 3 CEOs or 3 big, corporate officers went to jail for criminal negligence. This is the first citation happened under Food Safety Modernization Act, because that's what the Congress gave the FDA the authority to bring criminal negligence case against if somebody is, of course, this is not going to be the case for small farmers, but for big corporations, you have the resources, you have all the bells and whistles, and if they found that there were negligence, safety-related negligence, food safety-related negligence, they can bring criminal complaint against. And they are in jail, 3 of the executives. So this is a real situation where the government, the public health agencies, and everybody, and consumers taking it very seriously. So having this audit really helps you to reduce the risk and kind of show that you have taken proactive steps to eliminate or reduce the common risk from there. Now, one of the other thing I must mention here is that when a quality management document or food safety plan is being created, one of the common issue what we see that initially things go really good and then kind of it falls apart. So having that continuation is extremely important, that it's each and every day's job. You have to bring it into your culture. And that's what we talk about, that the food safety culture in here. So as we said that, it creates the market opportunity. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here about that. You all understand that having that certification, having that audit done gives you a lot of advantages when it comes to market your product, sales of your products. And then it also helps the group gap in this particular situation. You can share the resources. So it's a shared use saving. So basically, when you're not hiring an auditor to do your audit yourself, if it's needed, it's a group responsibility. So if there are 10 members, so it's 1/10 of the cost what otherwise you would have had to pay. It allows for cost and labor saving because it's done from a group perspective. Your beans, production equipment, and forms are all standardized, so you don't have to worry about it individually, so that's advantageous. Now, some of the technical assistance is extremely important because something happens to one of your group members and there is some technical troubleshooting. Suppose something was coming bad or something like a problem with some fertilizers contaminated with enteric bacteria or something like that had happened. You can learn from that, and that could be something which you can see much before it happens to your farm. So those technical troubleshooting, the information that comes out of that is also shared with you, so you know about that. So there are several of these advantages on this. Now, your facilitators, your auditors are all shared. So therefore, again, that's an advantage. You do not have to do it all by yourself. Now, what it creates, where I was trying to come, it creates a culture of food safety because now 10, 12, 15, 16 of you or 20 of you are together for the GAP audit program or group GAP program. Now, why group GAP is in the place? Because of food safety. So you talk about food safety. Now, when you start talking about food safety, it becomes a part of your operation, it becomes part of your daily routine. That's where I say 90% of the battle is won. You know that. Then nobody has to come and every time chime on your ear that, hey, you need to be taking care of that because of blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that. You know this. That's very important. You talk with your fellow grower, right? So basically, hey, what about this? Have you already done it? Or so there's a cultural exchange starts. And we have seen that, and that's why FDA is very high on, I would say their high priority is creating this food safety culture. We need to create this as a part of our habit, part of our way of operation. Once it's done, food safety becomes more manageable problem than as it seems. Now, it also creates an environment of learning because, you work as a group. Maybe sometimes you say that, okay, we have 15 growers interested. Our Cook County, extension Catherine is, I think, in the back. Catherine. So she works with Jack Grant, who is years of experience working on that. Jack couldn't come here today because we had some other planning meeting in Springfield. But these are resources here, local resources. Reach out to them. They'll be more than glad to help you. They are more knowledgeable in the field operation than I am. They are far more knowledgeable. They can provide you actual hands-on, tips, what you have to do. The resources are here on your backyard, I must say. So please use those resources and creates a culture of learning from each other, learning from the community in this case. Now, let us talk about the, yes. Yes, absolutely. So 10 minutes break, and then we will talk about the audit fees and how much it costs to do all this good stuff.
All right, if everyone can hear me, can we make our way back to the meeting room?
So let's move towards how much it costs to do gap audits. So this slide will give you some idea about what's the current rates. So the current audit fee for USDA is $115 per hour. And the producers are charged for the actual hours that the USDA spends on their farm. So if they spent 5 hours, then that would be $575 or something around that. They will be charging for the typical audit. If they spend more than that, less than that, that will be charged as the actual hours been used. Now, this includes all travel time, preparation to review your food safety plan, the time for on-site audit, basically that's the time they spend on your farm, and administrative time to review, certify, and post-audit results. So basically, let me clarify this. I think I misspoke, is that this is not the time they just spend on ground on your farm, but it actually includes everything which goes for reviewing the processes in your, processes and practices in your farm. So that includes, as I mentioned, the travel time, reviewing your food safety, plan, administrative processes, and also the time they actually physically, spend the time on your farm. Now, a typical average is somewhere between $800 to $1,400. That's an estimate. Now, there could be some follow-up audits, unannounced or follow-up audits are charged on the same hourly basis. Usually that unannounced audit, if there is one, would cost you around $250 to $500. So this is pretty much for the individual producers, as the individual producers, you can expect the USDA charges there. Now, for the other gap types, for example, harmonized gap plus services, it requires a payment of annual $250 fee to maintain the GFSI certification. So that certification comes from the GFSI, that Global Food System Institute, Food Safety Institute. So they issue the certification, and you can actually use that certificate to prove that you are a GFSI certified farm. So that cost is an additional $250 per year. So this is for an individual farmer. Now, if you are going for a group gap, then how the members' fee structures are there. So, and this is an estimate, and you can read the slide, and I will be reading this, that initial application review and fee is about 8 hours they spent for this, which is around $920 one-time fee. So this is the initial review of your application. Now, after the USDA external producer audits, USDA system audit and USDA follow-up audit. So if you take all these, the external audits, system audit, and follow-up audits, the number of hours depends on the actual time for the audit, which include desk and on-site audit activity and auditor's travel time. So just like the individual audit slide, as you said, the travel time, the administrative review of your food safety plan, QMS, et cetera, would be all included. And this is the same rate, $115 per hour, but it could vary depending on the situation. Continuous participation fee, which is approximately 2 hours worth time, $230. Group member list change fee. So basically, this is another process that if you have some members, coming or leaving, then there is a list change fee, which is about an hour of their work, charges about per hour rate, which is $115. Now, so what happens that on-site producer farm audits are performed by the USDA on a representative sample farms, as we mentioned, right? So basically, this is not really, each 16 farms they are going to go. They'll be going to, if you have total 16 members, they'll go to 4 farms, which is a square root of 16. They will go to 4 farms and they will be doing the audits there. And based on the results of that audit, the group audit is issued, audit certification, gap certification is issued. So that's how there's also another system which I mentioned is called the systems audit, which looks at the implementation of adherence to the group's QMS. So your quality management system document would be reviewed, and that's more of a system-wide, meaning the entire group, how this is working. So that's reviewed. Now, so all these things are part of the group audit process, or group gap audit process. So, and some of these are the USDA fees. Now, there are some additional costs associated. As we mentioned, we were talking about that you need to have an internal auditor, right? So, there's a training associated with that, which cost about $900 plus travel cost. So that's one thing, yes?
So is the auditor training independent of the group certification? In other words, can someone go through the auditor training, or do they already have to be a part of a group certification? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so my understanding is this, that if you go for a group audit, group gap, you need to have an internal auditor. So there are associated training. So it's a part of the process
Correct,
itself.
correct.
Yes.
But can there be independent auditor training outside of, somebody from a group? So in other words, let's say there's a group certification over here, can there be independent auditor training as well?
I guess, they can go for the individual auditors training, that if they have to go for somebody outside of the group, that's what she's asking.
I'm asking if somebody outside of a group can go for the internal auditor training. Is it a separate certification, a separate process? In other words, I understand that, let's say a group, right, wants to get certified and they designate someone, like this young man here, to be an internal auditor, and they send him to be their internal auditor. What I'm asking is, can you also have a separate certification going on as an internal auditor, not being a part of a group? Or the training? Not asking for me, but yes, let's say that. Let's say I wanted to understand the whole process as an internal auditor so that I can either apply it to my own farm, or I can apply it or be an internal auditor for groups that don't want to go through that process. So is there that opportunity to become an internal auditor or go through that to understand the guidelines and not be a part of a group? Okay. Okay, so when I would apply, I would need to say I'm affiliated with certain groups, and that's the only opportunity then an internal auditor would have. Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Thank you. That's a very, good question, that, if you want to have it something that can I be, separately certified the auditor, but, it sounds like that you have to be associated with for the group. And because this auditor's training is specific for group cap. So you will know how to, how to audit for a group, not as an individual. Okay, so then the expensive part of this is a QMS writing. So that's the most, comprehensive document in your GAP, process or program. It usually entails about 40 to 80 hours of staff time, and there are several different resources out there. If you decide to go for a third-party person coming and writing that QMS for you, you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 to, kind of create that QMS documentation out there. So that's the, I would say the most expensive, part of that. And then there is the management of, once you have the QMS document, how you're managing the QMS document. That's a continual process, which around 40 to 400 hours of staff time, which depending on the size of your group, the complexity of your QMS and other factors. So therefore, so this is, to keep in your mind that, based on how big is your group and how many different commodities you're growing, it all, determine how complex your QMS would be. Now, your internal audit, which includes your farm audit and the QMS audit, which is usually 1 to 6 hours of your time, and this will be done by maybe your internal auditor in that case. So that person will do the internal audit. So there's not an appreciable amount of cost associated directly with that, because this is done more or less internally. So as you can see that the whole process, involves several different steps, but most of these fees which are listed are one-time fees. So once you have your QMS, prepared, it's a one-time document. You are not going to do it every year. So once it's done, it's there. You can use it for next several years unless and until you have a significant change in your production practices. So suppose, all of you have started to grow completely different sets of crops, and which doesn't happen, right? So once the QMS document is created, it's more or less a standalone, stable document which can be used over a period of time. So that's one of its advantages. Even though this cost for the group gap looks, when I look at these numbers, much higher, especially with the QMS, but if you're 10 or 20 farmers or 15, 16 farmers, you are looking at a combined cost of that. So $10,000 if they're charging for 10 farms together. So individual farms are responsible for $1,000 or something around, whatever the negotiated, way you want to do it, But just the simple math would tell you that. So this is where the cost thing, this is situation on the costs are. Now, there are some funding assistance, and this is something which we might have to, talk about this. Yes, I'll take this question after this.
You said unless there are significant changes, the QMS document would stand. Is there somewhere to understand what those significant changes might be?
Yes, so basically and again, the significant changes from the general food safety standpoint is that, suppose, I'll give an example here. So today you have a QMS with commodities which does not include sprouts. None of your farms are growing any sprout product. So that's, suppose, your situation today. You create a QMS based on that. Now, you start to include sprout in your, suppose you have 16 farms and 6 of them say that, okay, we are going to go into the sprout, we are going to grow the sprout. Now, sprout is a separate hazard as per Food Safety Modernization Act. Yes?
So I just wanted to throw this out there. With the sprouts, that would be geared more towards your food safety plan.
Yes.
For the quality management system, you would, along the lines of, based off of your system audit, maybe there were things found that was lacking information or something changed as far as how you bring on new members. Those are areas where you would be updating that quality management system, things that would require a change.
So significant structural and operational changes.
Because of the variables, I don't know that there is a list made. There are resources available, which I believe you have listed in here with the Food Safety Leadership Network, that has a lot of those things. It's not going to have everything because something might come up. Mm-hmm. Depends on how your quality management system was originally written. Because within that, you're going to decide how you take on new members. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think we have another question.
I have a question about the QMS, writing the QMS plan. With a person, instead of getting a consultant, would it be okay if you had someone who actually had their FSMA certification already or their food safety manager certification? Would they be qualified to write a QMS? Or do you have to have somebody that's actually qualified in writing a quality management system program?
So the gap, this is again the USDA's, I will draw the USDA's experience in that. My guess would be for the writing the QMS, usually there are specialized people. This is basically, now, FSMA is very much food safety related. This has more of like operational aspects. So there are subtle differences in there. So somebody who is certified may or may not be qualified for writing this QMS system. USDA's representative. Oh, you want to pitch in? Yes.
Example models can give you a really good idea, but you do not have to have a specific certification for the quality management system. Yeah.
So it's very unlikely of the food FSMA because FSMA is very certificate and credential based. This one is more like that individual has to be, it doesn't matter whether that person is certified or not. Has to be knowledgeable about writing this one. So that's where it is, yes.
And can I add one more thing? So on the previous slide, we were talking about the activities and the cost for the initial application and review at 8 hours. So during that initial application and review, and why it's charged at 8 hours, is we actually review your quality management system. You submit that to us, we take a look at it, and then we send it back to you to let you know if there's certain areas where maybe something's not quite there, or if you're all set. But that 8 hours does involve us looking at it twice before your actual audit, your system audit, okay? So you're not going into a system audit wondering if you are anywhere close to where you need to be.
Okay.
Can I jump in one more time as well? I think the overall takeaway for the costs, because they can be daunting and they are variable because every farm is different. The amount of time an auditor spends on your farm is different. But what you have to understand is that when the auditor arrives to the time they leave, they are there to do your audit. It's not the time to chit-chat. It's the time to be prepared. You have your documents and your records in place. Because with her being there, with them being there, you're spending that. That's your money. And so you want to be as prepared as possible. So.
Yep. Any other question so far? So, as we talk about the cost and the process, and definitely there are some financial assistance and kind of, very recently, I'm going to show you the next few slides and you'll see that there are financial assistance available for getting these audits and these programs done. So, and you can get those financial assistance. So, the USDA Risk Management Agency, RMA, you need to have a liability insurance. Many buyers and retailers require liability insurance. So basically, this is driven by more of your customers who might need you to have that or carry that, which is unrelated to GAP, but is another expense the growers may have to consider. So once you say I'm GAP certified, that okay, you have the liability insurance. So you have to have it. Even though GAP does not require that you have to have that, but that kind of comes from your buyers, or wherever you want to sell the commodities. Now, the two press releases. So basically, is it a link there? USDA introduces new insurance policy for farmers who sell locally. So there is some insurance policy which I guess run through USDA, right? So basically, that's one thing, and RMA makes improvements in the whole farm revenue protection system. So basically, these are the two issues which comes on a regular basis. So there are some programs from USDA itself which has introduced or the helps available through this program for you to get some of this insurance, some of the revenue protection systems for that. Now, There are other funding resources available to different federal grants, farmers markets and local food promotion programs, urban agriculture innovation production cooperative grants, which is called Farmers Gov. You can go there. National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which is called NIFA, urban indoor and emerging agriculture programs. So these are the different programs. And this information should be included in your toolkit, and you can go to these websites and read their requirements and how you can apply for this financial assistance. Now,
These particular ones are not listed in your toolkit.
okay,
We can get you the information, but I believe if it's government, it's grants.gov, and I believe they can all be found. Definitely take a photo of it so that you can follow up. But I believe the NIFA one is a new one, and so I put the letter of intent date. It's not actually, it doesn't close until I think September, but if you're interested and it's applicable to you as urban growers, you do need to submit a letter of intent by July 11th. So we can get you. Okay. And Ashley said that she believes that the other two are actually closed for this current year, but possibly the following year. And then in your toolkit, the loose paper, there is a new, and that'll come up next. So
Yep.
It's a fact sheet. Feel free to. Yes. The ones that are closed, if you'll go back,
so, yeah,
it's the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program and Urban Agriculture and Innovation are both closed for this current year. But the NIFA Urban Indoor and Emerging Agricultural Program is brand new and is available. And that's just a letter of intent that it doesn't actually close until I believe the end of September. But these are annual grants that are available. So it will renew for the following year.
and this is the one which you have in your toolkit, right? This.
Yes, and this one is also incredibly new, so
Yes.
new that we don't have all the information. It is very handy that we have this fact sheet, but the announcement as far as how it's going to happen and how FSA is going to award money. Ashley, do you want to add anything, or just wait?
I think that as we know more, we can send that around and tell people where and when to apply, but even within the USDA, we're waiting for all those final dates and everything. But this is probably the most exciting because this is specifically for paying for GAP. And for specialty crops. And so the fact sheet that you have is basically all the information that the USDA has put out so far, so.
Yeah, this is brand new, just came, I think, last week or something around that, 17th. So,
One thing to add to that is with this one, it doesn't just cover the certification cost or a percentage of that. If you flip to the back side of that page, it can help in covering some of the cost and development of your food safety plans. It can help with the certification fees, the microbiological testing, training. So there's a lot of areas and a lot of ways this grant can help.
so this can also help to hire them for the external auditors, right? Like, the third-party auditors.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really helpful because you can hire third-party auditors. You can get some from the extension, but this would not be very specific for your program because there are. I was just talking with Catherine, and after this funding opportunity came up, a lot of interest. And right now, with this funding, the best thing is that you take some basic training, basic food safety writing workshop as a group, and then use this funding to hire somebody who can write this QMS and other, audit programs. Catherine, yes.
Hi, everyone. Catherine Pereira, University of Illinois Extension, here in Cook County. And my colleague, Zach Grant, is your local food safety specialist here for the county, and he offers a farm food safety planning writing workshop. And because of this new funding, we know demand is going to go up, so he's going to make sure more of those workshops are offered this year for all Illinois farms, okay? And because he's here in Cook County, many of you will have much more direct access to him. He won't be able to, do individual technical assistance with all your farms because of the high demand and having other responsibilities. But if you do have questions, he would be your first source, right, to reach out to and ask questions, and definitely get on our mailing list, watch our website so you can find out when those workshops will be happening. Okay, and if you have any questions, I have a card here, and I can make sure you have our email addresses.
So thank you, Catherine. So yeah, we do have resources here in Cook County, and with this funding opportunity, please use it as a great opportunity for you to get the GAP certification and the GAP process on your farm. So any other question before we move to certain very last few? You're almost in the home run, so basically last few slides. Any questions so far? Okay, so there are certain misconceptions about the USDA GAP program. Now, FSMA produce safety rule, we talk about that. Are the same and GAP certificate exempt a grower from a regulatory inspection by the FDA? You can say that we have already discussed. These are two different programs run by two different agencies. So therefore, no. You can be GAP certified, but it does not exempt you from the...
Now the answer will pop up.
Okay, so yeah. The answer, so click, another click wanted. So basically this is, we discussed it, before that. You may be GAP certificate, that does not exempt you from Food Safety Modernization Act. If you are covered by the Food Safety Modernization Act, that's a separate set of requirement you have to fulfill. Now, pushing GAP certification is only for the growers who want to sell to large retailers. What is your take? Is it true or false? False. And so, what would be the right statement to make here? Do you have to be GAP certified only if you sell to large retailers? No. So, this is for any grower interested in accessing more market opportunity, regardless of large and small, regardless of your target, customer. So this is for everyone. Private third-party certifiers are more likely to have an unbiased auditor who are more willing to work with growers to resolve the non-conformance in GAP audit finding. Well, this is something to think about. So there is a conception or misconception about this. Is the private third-party auditors or certifiers are more likely to have an unbiased auditor who are more willing to work with growers to resolve the non-conformation in GAP audit findings. Is it the case or not? What do you think about this? So let's go to the answer. Actually, all GAP program auditors, whether federal, state, private, are held to the same standard of training and integrity, regardless of which certifying body for the audit. The process for addressing non-conformance is the same regardless of the auditor or the agency. So that means it does not have to be always a third-party auditor. If you have someone who is internally trained, or the training is regardless of their affiliation, is standard. So this is an important thing to remember. Group cap is another USDA audit standard like cap, age cap plus. It's another USDA audit, group cap. Is it a USDA audit, another audit? Yes? No? No. Okay. So this is, we talked about that. This is a process, right? So group cap is a certification option for any group of production locations and secondary activity locations that agree to operate under the shared quality management system and seek certification under one of the USDA's gap audit services, which include gap, harmonized gap, or age gap plus. So as a group gap applicant, you can apply for any one of these three. So how you're applying for the certification, that's what the group gap is, right? But what you are getting is one of these gap certification, either gap or harmonized gap or harmonized gap plus. Not every farm is audited under group gap, and if one member in the group fails an audit, the whole group fails. We discussed it very clearly, so it will be no bummer, right? So, failure of an on-site audit by a group member does not necessarily affect the outcome of the gap audit. So, a failure of a group member does not necessarily affect the outcome of the overall gap audit because there are other considerations. This is more of a systems approach they take when they do that audits. Group gap is only for groups of growers who are close friends and neighbors and practically grow together already. So, no. So you don't have to be friends, right? So, here you go. It works, of course, for friends and neighbors, but it does not require to be like that. So you can be coming together to form a group just in order to get access to this certification. So, regardless of your existing connection or long-standing relationship, you can form a group. The only required relationship is the agreement to adhere to the QMS document. Remember, that's a shared document that applies to everyone in the group. So everybody has to be compliant or to follow that QMS document. As long as you agree on that, the others are to some extent trivial, I must say, when it comes to form the group. Group cap growers are forced to blindly trust all other members of their group. I think not, definitely. The growers who have agreed to seek group cap certificate must have trust among their members. This is the utmost important when forming a group. However, QMS system has checks and balances. So you can question that, within the group, but your QMS document would be able to handle that. And there are places to verify members are compliant with food safety and group requirement. Trust, but verify. So, of course, you don't distrust yourself, but you don't have to blindly trust. And the only thing is that you have to verify that this is going on, because you have to remember that failure of a group member may negatively, impact you as well. It all depends on what kind of failure is happening and stuff like that. So, the verification is an internal ways of rectifying any internal issue that you might be having. So trust but verify, yes. Okay, so what the growers need for a, for creating a gap program, right? The first grower need is, you have to ask some of this question, what are my current and potential markets? So you're doing an evaluation of that before you are going for this, think about this. Then you start thinking about what food safety requirement must be satisfied if I have to go to that market. Is there anything that they require? Is a gap audit required in that sense? And if yes, then which gap audits are accepted there? So this is driven by the market where you want to enter or you want to touch or get an access to. So even it would be meaningful to have this information from buyers. If you're forming a group or individual, if you're forming a group, you bring that information and look for that, okay, there might be an issue with a group that, maybe 50% of the growers are selling to a buyer who needs, age gap plus. And the 50%, they don't care as long as you have a gap certification. So then you need to apply for one as a group because you are not applying for both of these certification processes. You have to have that internal discussion, what type of things you will be going. So knowing that information beforehand from your potential buyers are very helpful for you to determine what are the things you need. Then, now, as I mentioned, that which specific audit they need. This is very important, this is critical. Now, there is no one-size-fits-all standard. So communicate with your buyer, understand their requirement, and develop well-aligned food safety program. So working with the buyer is critical in this case. You have to, because you are starting this process based on your market, based on your buyer's need. And it's kind of going backwards in that sense. And then you are starting your gap certification or gap audit process. Now, another question to ask them, will you accept group gap, certification? And there might be an instances where, they may not, but you need to know that beforehand. If they say that, no, we need this, and we don't accept. But I don't know, how common is this? This is from your experience from the USDA side that the buyer doesn't accept group gap certification.
It does happen, but what I will say is if you come across a buyer that says that they will not accept it, reach out to me and we will have discussions with them to see what we need to do so that they will accept our program. It is becoming less and less because we have worked with a number of large buyers to get this in line, but just to be aware, it can happen, and you can reach out to us, and we will start a discussion with them, okay?
Yep. So that's a great, I would say, gesture from the USDA, right? So basically what the agency is saying that, they could help you to resolve some of this issue. Unlikely, but yes, there could be, if somebody has never heard about group gap, they say that it's not the gap, you're getting something. So this is more or less, awareness issue, not really kind of any solid other reason that. So any other questions so far about, that we go? Yes, please.
So the certificate would read group gap certification, not gap certification.
No, that's again a question for USDA. The certificate will read what type of certificate you have, but through which mechanism, that probably would be also written.
Correct. So it's going to be a group certificate, but to each individual grower, if that's what you were requesting. But it's gonna have that standard that you are certified to. So whether that was the GAP standard, the harmonized, or the harmonized GAP plus. So you'll be certified as a group under one of those standards. Does that answer your question?
Yes, no.
Okay.
We still have the group, and we say the gap, that will be imprinted on this.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Catherine?
I think Catherine had something.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that everyone in the room is aware that Advocates for Urban Agriculture has been having a group gap here in Chicago for the past year. So reach out to Advocates for Urban Agriculture. They do have a group gap coordinator. I don't know the current status or the current farms participating. I've lost track, but that is a resource for you, and it's happening right now here on the ground in Chicago.
Great. So you have a local, community advocate of urban agriculture, right? So basically that's what, they'll be great to reach out and learn more about, their experience. So, the resources. Now, I can cover it or, yep, it's okay. I can cover it. That's okay. So, the first group of resources is in the room. The Illinois Department of Agriculture. Christy is the representative from the State Department of Ag, and you will have her contact information here in the one of the inserts or something on the agenda, I guess, right? So somewhere
It's on the agenda, yes.
It's on the agenda, yes. So she's the contact, a person from Illinois Department of Ag, then Cooperative Extension, University of Illinois Cooperative Extension. Catherine and Jack Grant is your local contact. We can send their information. I will send an email to Jana and the group. So basically you get their information, and you already have my information. So I'm situated in Urbana, but you have a local contact in the Cook County. And they are very knowledgeable. As you can see, Catherine is here. Jack couldn't be here today, but he's available. Extremely rich resource, I must say, that, they can provide you many, assistance, many, advice as you move forward. And then, of course, your organization, Eden Place Farms, where we are having this, is one of our partners now. So basically, we will be in continuous touch, as Jana showed you the first slide, right? So it's a collaborative effort where we have a State Department of Agriculture, Extension, and the nonprofit working together collaboratively under the aegis of USDA. So, and the USDA is here, the actual federal agency. So we have everybody in the room right now as we speak. And we won't dissolve after this workshop today. This will be actually the beginning of this partnership. We are launching this here, just take it as a launching program. If you have questions, you can reach out to these organizations and I'm pretty sure that we should be able to provide you the type of assistance you would need. That's why we are hosting this pilot program over here, okay? So, there are so many different type of resources that we provide, and there are some list of that. We do have Food Safety Modernization Act related training We do offer, actually Jack is one of the lead trainers of Produce Safety Alliance. I'm a lead trainer of Produce Safety Alliance, but most of the trainings are done collaboratively. If it happens, you should be in our mailing list. You will get this information from us that, okay, this is offered. And nowadays, after the COVID, if anything had happened, which I would say semi-positive, is that a lot of these trainings are offered synchronously online. So basically, you will be interacting like the online viewers today. They are listening live. The trainings are also offered that way. I mean, I'm offering some workshop in August, which is in hybrid mode, which would be very similar to this one, where they can see us actually talking. They have the opportunity to ask questions. You do not have to leave your station. We are a large state, right? So suppose there is a growers training happening in somewhere in the southern part of Illinois. I understand that it's a 4-hour travel time, and sometimes you may not be able. But most of the time, we might be having, we are trying, at least for the growers training, having some Zoom trainings offered. So that's an opportunity. Jack in Cook County offers food safety plan writing workshops, as Catherine mentioned. And I just had yesterday some, email exchange with Jack, and Jack is trying to gear up, and we are trying to mobilize more resources to offer these trainings instead from our university. Information on quality management system, as Catherine mentioned, you can reach out to Advocate for Urban Agriculture about their experience and share that information. They should be able to provide you some guidance on that. Of course, NASDA is basically the umbrella organization who is, right now is organizing this particular workshop, so they should be able to also provide some information from their different pilot sites. So the bottom line here is all these different trainings, audit certification, risk-based farm food safety principle, direct marketing training, opportunity to connect with other growers, these are all available over here, because this is why the collaborative way of operation is so powerful, that we don't do everything by ourselves. We do use others' resources, and we share our resources with others. Now, there's a certain checklist, as you say, that once you are ready and you are ready to get certified or for the audit, you have to prepare some documentation. As Jana mentioned, that when they come, you should be prepared for that. So that's how you can minimize their time. If you are arranged well, you have everything in place, it makes the review process, you won't believe, extremely, extremely easy. And once you are very well arranged in everything, the auditor always gets a first impression, which is a very positive impression. So that's where, a lot of time as a teacher, I always say that when I'm grading, when somebody's answer sheet is nicely written, it's very nice, everything I can understand, I somehow become biased, even as that, to some extent, for the presentation, a lot of time, right? So make an effort to be well arranged, well prepared for the audit. Checklist for each of the standards are there. So GAP, whether the age gap standard or age gap plus standard are there. So make a checklist. Your food safety plan and records should be in place properly, so it's easy to find. Your QMS manual, if you are going for a group gap, is out there. A nice binder, you can provide them. Then you request an audit. And then it's been scheduled, and then the auditor comes and as scheduled and go through the audit process. After the audit, the results of the audit process would be completed, or shared with you, who successfully completed the certification. are posted on USDA website. So there is a website where actually the buyers can go and verify that what you are claiming is there or not. So basically that information will be there. You will be receiving a certificate. You will receive a copy of the audit report. So if there's any finding, you can address that. If everything looks good, then it's ready to be shared with your buyer. That okay, this is the report. Sometimes some buyer may ask for it, that I need to see your report, audit report, and then that you can share with them. Now, the grower toolkit, which is this document, it provides you many of these questions. How will it benefit my farm, right? So basically, look at this grower toolkit. Is there anyone to help? The information is there. And what do I do first? So this is the beginning process for you to go into the GAP certification process and prepare for the GAP audits. Okay? So it's an outstanding toolkit that the NASDA has led to prepare, and this is really helpful for anyone who is reaching out to our stakeholder, like the extension educators like ours. We really commend NASDA for creating this toolkit. This is extremely helpful, and this morning I was just talking that there is already an interest from some of our extension educators that, well, this is great because this is a 3-hour thing which basically is easy to conduct, and then once we roll out this toolkit and the presentations, it really helps create an awareness about the GAP. In places where they have never heard about the GAP and how that can benefit them or their businesses. So it's a great toolkit, and I think you would find it useful in your operation. And if you need any help, all the information is out there. So with this, we were having an ongoing Q&A, but now this is the official time of the Q&A. But that's any thoughts or questions? Yes, please.
How are the group gaps formed? I mean, is Eden Farm getting ready to, I guess, sponsor the group gap for whatever group is here? And how many, I think you said it was like 10 to 16 farms?
No, there is no magic number for the group gap. Is there?
There is no magic number.
No.
Okay.
We've had groups as small as 2 growers and up to close to 200.
Okay.
Anything in between.
So we just kind of form our groups and then move forward.
There is a tool on our website that it's listed towards the front, the Group Gap, USDA Group Gap website, that will give you that checklist. So you can look at things, make sure you have everything in line prior to submitting that application. So you have absolutely everything ready to go. Yeah, okay. I thought I saw there was a presentation.
And one of the question came, and then I will ask those who have reviewed, what would be if they want to go for the group gap? What would be a successful way of forming the group? How is it an initiative comes from, say, like, the non-profit, they put together a group, or is it something on individual growers go to bunch of growers?
Things like this. I mean, bringing a group of people together that are like-minded, that are here for that same reason, is the great first step into forming one of these groups. And then just discussing, what do we want our group to look like? What type of management, what type of oversight? Deciding in the group who would be, your group manager, who would want to go for your internal auditors if you went that route. But things like today, where it's bringing all of you together, is the best place to start with forming these groups.
Yep.
Yeah, could you elaborate just a little bit more on the distinction between the gap and the H gap, and just how much that impacts your access to the market?
Well, I mean, so this is separate sets of standards, right? So GAP is the, I would say, the native USDA's original program, which for harmonized system, the GAP program, which is more, let me go back to the slide, is based on the produce safety standard, food safety standard, produce safety rule standard, and they bring that aspect in the harmonized GAPS system. So where you are actually taking some additional, requirement into consideration in there. So that is harmonized GAP, and the harmonized GAP Plus is coming from GFSI, which is the Global Food Safety Institute, so Global Food Safety Institute. So that's another outside third-party organization.
So that's more for international
Yes, so it
distribution.
is broader, broadly accepted in that sense, So depending on your buyer's need, you would opt for either one of these standards, like,
So, but in general, can you kind of frame, like, if you just have the regular GAP certification, how much access does that give you to the market as opposed to the HGAP? Is it a big distinction between the two, or?
procure.
Larger buyers are going to be looking for either HGAP or HGAP Plus. Not all of them. So it's definitely variable. The standard GAP audit is going to open your access to markets substantially. With the harmonized and harmonized plus, it's very specific buyers that have that request.
So that's where, your buyer, having a discussion with your potential buyer is very important, to kind of, if they don't require an H gap, then you don't have to go for an H gap standard, for that matter. So,
Some of our research showed that as GAP is the most basic of the certifications, a lot of buyers will say, okay, well, I'll accept the year one as a GAP certification. In year two, I'll allow you to, the second year, work towards harmonized. Harmonized is going to, HGAP Plus may be way too more than what you ever would want because you may not want to ship internationally. Harmonized GAP, to get there, use GAP, but harmonized GAP may be where you want to be as far as opening your access.
So, yeah, I think, that makes sense because with Food Safety Modernization Act, everybody is kind of, and there is always misconception about that, the FSMA, a lot of these, if you're a small farmer, you don't have to be FSMA compliant because you are not covered by FSMA. But what the harmonized GAP does, it actually takes some produce safety rule concept, some specific requirement, not all, right? Which some of the buyers might think that this is a good, this is something more than just having a standard GAP. So, having a age gap probably is optimal to some extent, where you are not too basic, not too advanced, something like that. So.
Well, not a question, a comment. As far as trying to find other gardens or farms that would like to form a group, I would like to ask the farms that's here today, could we all put our names on a list, get the list started today? Then maybe later we can come together to discuss forming a group if you're interested. And I would put on, you know, just put the name of your organization, where you're located, and I guess by signing it, by putting your name down, that's showing that you may have an interest in forming a group. If we could do that today, that would be really helpful.
We definitely want to give everybody the opportunity to ask whatever questions you have. If you don't have anything specific right now, think about it. Sorry, I'm scrolling through all of these slides as we get towards the end because you know it. So we tested you before on your knowledge of GAP, and you've gone through our little awareness, education, and training. So I'm going to ask you to do it again, please. As I mentioned, it's very important for us to know where we can go with this program and the information that we need to share. Dr. Banerjee has it in printed, if we can pass that around if you need it. It will look very similar. It's the exact same one. So just show us what you've learned. Thank you.
Hello. Before you all start trickling out, I have 3 final requests for y'all. One is if you can hand me the photo release form, and then 2, when we're all done with the surveys, if we can gather for a group photo. And then 3 is the best one. If you all can clean out my swag station over here before you leave, I don't want to bring it back to Virginia. So as we begin to wrap up, hand me the photo release form, and then we'll grab a group photo, and then we can get a list going too of all the folks who would want to participate, potentially moving forward for a group gap, facilitate that conversation. Thank you.
right, y'all, the last thing I'm gonna, oh, real quick. The last thing I'm gonna say about the toolkit. The last thing I'm going to say about the toolkit is that once we have it posted online, as you see, there's a lot of underlined information. All of those are links. And so I know that it doesn't necessarily show you in the printed copy what the website is and what the link is. So we will notify your group and Michael when we do have that live so that you'll have access to it, so you can use it to the full benefit. And I think we're going to take a photo outside real quick. So everybody, let's head out there. Let's get some sunshine. And thank you for coming today.